Make of a 1949 classic movie about a man who is both poisoned, just hours away possibly from death, as well as accused of murder. I guess that's enough tension for one day. Edmund O'Brien starred in the 1949 version. Dennis Quaid from The Big Easy stars in this version, playing a burned-out novelist, college professor, whose wife has filed for divorce and is then murdered. His star pupil has committed suicide, and after rounds of drinking and hostile encounters, he finds himself lashing out at a young student played by Meg Ryan, who says she has a crush on him, but he suspects her of poisoning him. And he's been told he has just a day or two to live to unravel this mystery.
Why did you murder me, huh?
What are you talking about?
You killed me, Sidney, with a Y, huh? You sit in my class anonymously for months, not a peep.
After he calms down and realizes he's mistaken about Ryan's intentions, he demands that she help him.
But you are my link to last night. So we're going to retrace our steps. Where we sat, who we talked.
We? No, wait a minute.
No, I can't wait a minute. I need your help.
No, I can't help you. I can't help my mother fold clothes. You need the police.
No, I've already had the police. They think I killed my student. They think I murdered my wife.
One of the many suspects in the film is a character played by Charlotte Rampling, the wealthy widow who sponsored the star student who committed suicide. Here Quaid tracks her to a barn on her estate.
It was your wife who fell apart at the art gallery yesterday evening.
Yes, and it was your cookie who crumbled at the memorial service. They both had a bad case of young Mr. Lang.
What do you know about Nick?
What do you think I know?
I think you can tell from those scenes that this is one very stylish film with all sorts of old-fashioned tilted camera angles, dramatic close-ups, and small touches, such as a shimmering martini glass that set up a whole mood of tension, even apart from the stories and the performances. Now, for the performance, I really like Dennis Quaid in the lead role. He is certainly the equal of Edmund O'Brien in the original film, which I saw last night. My only problem with this new version, which I really think is better than the original, which isn't all that hot as it turns out, is that it tails off at the end with a less than breathless finish. Other than that flaw, this is a credible contemporary adaptation of an old-fashioned movie, one of the better ones I've seen in a long time.
I'm in agreement with you in almost every detail of your review, including the ending. I mean, the ending is lame, and it could have been tightened up and made a little bit more ironic. I could even think the very last line of the movie could have been a different line, because the last line of this movie is wrong.
I know.
But apart from that, Quaid is terrific. And here he is as a classic film noir hero.
Yes.
The whole purpose of these films in the 1940s was to show an ordinary guy, not a criminal, not a man of action, who gets involved against his will in an entire web of intrigue that he never really understands. And it's just almost as if underneath all of us is this bottomless pit that we could fall into.
You're talking now about a whole change in the American cinema, really something significant here, which is instead of superheroes, instead of Dirty Harrys and all this kind of thing that we're so preoccupied in this era of violence, those films were much more concerned about our deepest fears.
That's right.
It had to do with the whole notion of going to the movies when there wasn't television around and there weren't gangs in the streets trying to kill you when you went to the parking lot. This is a throwback. The film opens in black and white. It's beautiful.
Ordinary People. There were 3 movies that have come out like this recently. Not only this one, but also Frantic with Harrison Ford.
Yes.
Also The House on Carroll Street with Kelly McGillis.
Yeah.
3 ordinary people trapped in events beyond their control.
Of the 3, I think this is the best.
Could be.
This and Frantic.
When we got 2 out of the 3 now. When we come back, Gregory Hines and Willem Dafoe are Army cops on the trail of a killer in Saigon in Off Limits.
Deserters, refugees, dopers, black marketeers. God, I love this town.
Off Limits, and it stars Gregory Hines and Willem Dafoe. He was the more humane of the 2 sergeants in platoon, as a couple of plainclothes military cops on duty in Saigon during the Vietnam War. They get assigned to a very nasty crime, the murder of a prostitute, and all of the clues indicate that the killer is a high-ranking American Army officer. Fred Ward co-stars in the movie as a master sergeant who seems to know a lot about the investigation.
Anything else? Not much. Her name was Nguyen Tao Jap. Apparently she's new to the area. I don't know why the building knows her.
One of the sources for information is a French nun played by Amanda Pays, who reveals there has been an epidemic of very similar murders.
The common link you are looking for is obvious even in these photographs. The murdered women's children were all Amerasian.
One of the movie's best scenes has the 2 cops surrounded by an angry mob after a sniper kills one of their suspects.
Back up, come on!
And that scene is a little reminiscent of a similar scene in The Year of Living Dangerously, although Dangerously was a better scene and a better movie. Off Limits is a skillful movie with a lot of technical expertise, and Hines and Defoe are effective. But this movie is a pretty dismal experience. It is joyless and grim and without any real purpose behind it. Now, that doesn't mean it ought to be upbeat. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that only with a plot about sick and perverted killings and a style that's relentlessly downbeat, maybe there should have been some kind of purpose or some kind of message here somewhere. Surely the movie isn't simply trying to depress us. The plot's predictable, the characters are standard, there are the usual crooked cops and brave hookers and saintly nuns, and the whole movie eventually just adds up to a long, slow slog through misery.
Well, that's the experience that I had watching the film. I was stunned, actually. I was waiting for the film to take some turn to justify its setting in Vietnam. In fact, I was actually offended by the film because it is a standard shootout picture, and they just decided to go to Vietnam for the shootout. It has no difference in anything that Stallone or Schwarzenegger has done. They just moved it in Vietnam, and I think Vietnam remains a place charged with emotional energy, and I think they ignored that totally in the film.
They did.
And I genuinely was offended. I didn't think that Defoe or Hines, I'm surprised at them for entering into a script. These are very talented actors. They should have demanded
Well, I don't know.
something.
They probably were able to look at the screenplay and see it was going to be a high-quality production, which it is in terms of technical quality, but
That's meaningless.
gee, all of the sleazy, gynecological, and clinical details that it gets into, and all of the stuff you'd rather not hear about, and then for no
no
purpose.
reason. That's the key.
That's right. Coming up next, Stand and Deliver, a film based on a true story about an amazing high school teacher whose unorthodox methods in a Hispanic ghetto turned his students into amazing college candidates.
I got a little problem, though. Yeah, me. No, seriously, man. Books. Can't have the homies see me.
The film Stand and Deliver is a bit of a sleeper, one of those true story pictures of a charismatic teacher that you might think going in is going to be so self-righteous it'll be boring. But Stand and Deliver is surprisingly effective, largely due to the extremely engaging and unpredictable performance of Edward James Olmos as the teacher. It's a complete switch from his police lieutenant character on Miami Vice. Olmos plays a math teacher in a Hispanic ghetto high school in Los Angeles who has to come up with some creative ways to engage his lethargic students. For example, here's the way he teaches them about percentages.
What you got?
Half.
Good. Excuse me, my German accent. What you got?
Missing 25%.
What?
Missing 25%.
That's right. Missing 25%. Is it true intelligent people make better lovers?
The big crisis in the movie is when the students successfully pass the very difficult SAT College Advanced Placement Exam in Calculus, and SAT officials presume that some cheating must have taken place.
The identity of the students were concealed until it was determined that irregularities existed.
Those scores would have never been questioned if my kids did not have Spanish surnames and come from barrio schools. You know that.
The resolution of that controversy creates a conclusion in this film that held as much interest for me as the outcome of the basketball game in Hoosiers, both small films about underdogs. Now, of course, some of the material is familiar. We have seen teachers use those kinds of techniques before. But it feels fresh this time because Edward James Olmos, as the teacher, surprises us as much as he surprises the students. I certainly would like to see Edward James Olmos remembered a year from now at Oscar time. He was a fascinating teacher. I enjoyed watching him, and that's why I enjoyed watching the movie.
Well, Gene, I enjoyed this movie, too, and it was a close call for me, but I'm going to have to go thumbs down because I felt that the pacing was off on the film, that there were all kinds of little directions that didn't lead anywhere, including his heart attack. And then the whole last third of the film revolves around the fact that after they passed the test the first time, they're accused of cheating because they all had the same wrong answers. Now, why did they all have the same wrong answers? I think, from looking at the film, that it was because the teacher didn't know calculus as well as he thought he did, and he gave them some wrong information. The clue to that is in the scene where all the students in the classroom agree on the answer, and he says it's wrong, but we never have that scene resolved to find out who's right or wrong, and we never have the wrong examination explained, so that the whole last part of the movie is confusing when it ought to be zeroing straight on through to that conclusion, which is undeniably very emotional.
Well, I think it is obvious, Roger, that, and this is based on a true story, and some statistic that we hear at the end of the film about what happened at this high school are really quite remarkable, which makes you really appreciate what this teacher has done, the real-life teacher. Suggests very strongly that it is racism that makes people quite initially question the test results, and I think that's what creates the energy in the film. But forget all that. Forget that it's a true story. If this were a phony story, I would still have watched it, because I'm telling you, this is as good a performance as we've talked about today.
All right, but Gene, it's not racism because they all have the same wrong answers, so there must be, I mean, if they'd been white, somebody would have said they all had the same wrong answers. That's just testing, and that should have been resolved. It should have been dealt with.
That's a quibbling point in a much better film.
Well, I have some other points that I could get into if we had a little more time. I think this is more of a made-for-TV, sociological kind of uplifting movie than it is. It could have been a lot more incisive.
The subject may be, the performance is movie caliber.
It is a good performance. Now to recap the movies that we reviewed on this week's show. We both voted thumbs down for the thriller Little Nikita, which was a waste of Sidney Poitier's talents. But a big surprise, 2 thumbs up for the charming and very funny Vice Versa. 2 more thumbs up for the stylish D.O.A. with Dennis Quaid facing death and dishonor. But 2 thumbs down for the grim and pointless Off Limits with Gregory Hines and Willem Dafoe as cops in Vietnam. And finally, a disagreement. Gene liked Stand and Deliver more than I did, even though I give you that performance. But I think of this week's movies, Vice Versa and D.O.A. are the real finds.
Well, I would agree. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including Matthew Broderick and Neil Simon's Army Reminiscence, Biloxi Blues, and Anne Margaret and Alan Alda star in a romantic comedy called A New Life. That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.